Hi, welcome back to another edition of 5 Wise Minutes. This time from Tallinn, where we're running our CyberNorth batch and about to hit Latitude conference. So exciting times, but as always, it's more exciting to welcome our guest, Patrick Campbell. Patrick has been a long time mentor. I actually don't even remember when you started working with. Few years. So, but it's always an amazing journey to get him back to the US, keep him awake during the 2 days here. He gets pumping. But actually, going back to that one, Patrick, as I will introduce more your expertise on pricing a bit later, but what was the initial connection to Wise Guys or to Estonia? How did all started?
Yeah, so so it was Callum actually, who was one of the managing directors a few years ago. He was reading some of our content on pricing as well as on some things in the world of subscriptions, and basically contacted me, and a couple of Skype calls later, I have been to Estonia 6 or 7 times now in the past few years. So I love it here, and that's why I keep coming back, basically.
I think you have done this very difficult path from almost consulting into a product, and now you're working more and more in your product part. How has the journey been?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it was an accident. I think I was more, it was an accident. It was like starting the company, I think I was just like a little bit of like a young jerk, if that makes sense. Like, I had like a bunch, I was just like this young, hungry like kid who was like too ambitious almost. So I always had this hubris about my boss where I was like, oh, I care more, I can always do better. Like I was one of those, I was a dream to manage, I'm sure. But it was one of those things. So like I got to a point where I was just like, no, like I'm gonna finally do it on my own. And I cashed in my small 401k, which is like a retirement account in the States. And then basically went from there. I think like in terms of the trajectory of the business, like we've always been like a software company, and that's what a lot of people don't know about us, is like we've always been like software. Now we layered services on top of some of that software because it allowed us to basically charge more and then also like get better retention. But I think for us, like it was always this fascination with truth. And what I mean by that is like subscription truth. And so we had this like little product that, you could send out a survey and it would measure like price sensitivity. And then we were like, oh, we want more data. So we added to that product. And then we were like, oh, well, we need more data to figure out why companies grow. And that's when we built ProfitWell Metrics, which is this free subscription financial metrics product that you can plug into Stripe or Braintree or whatever you're using for your billing. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, now that we have this data, we know that here's this problem or that problem. And so let's build a product for that. And so it's really just been an obsession with truth, an obsession of like finding the right answer. And that's what kept driving us to like the next milestone. And sometimes like you only see that in hindsight. Like I think at the time, I don't know if I could have clearly painted a path between these different products, but I could have at least told you like we're going after that truth of subscription growth.
You come here a lot, you talk to a very early stage. What are the 3 mistakes or the 3 areas that you think every company should be looking at before setting the price? What are the 3 things they need to understand before setting the price?
Yeah, your first thing is your price is so much more than, like in the early stage especially, it's not even the number. Like everyone's just like, how do I figure out the number? And it's like, I've been doing a bunch of mentoring, now and in the past, and I think my most common advice is you have to figure out who you're selling to. That's all you should be searching for, and that's your positioning and that's your market. And all these little details about should I end my prices in 9s or 0s, or should I put my most expensive tier on the left hand of the page? None of that stuff matters if you don't know who that customer is. And I think the second piece is like the one thing to nail besides the journey of finding your customer, which can take years sometimes. But the one thing kind of tactically to nail is what's called your value metric. So how you charge. So is it per user, per 100 visits, per 1,000 seats, whatever it is. If you get that right, but you get kind of everything else wrong, you'll still be pretty okay. We've just seen that in the data that like that is probably the most important part of pricing. And you can have the number be wrong and still be okay there. And I'd say the third thing is like really it's a process that needs to be revisited constantly. It's kind of a weird thing. Like your price is the exchange rate on the value that you're providing. So everything you're doing from your sales and your marketing down to your product is product team is basically driving someone to a point of conversion or justifying the product or the price. And what's funny is we spend so much time developing the product, obviously, or driving people to the point of conversion, but we spend so little time like measuring or looking at that point of conversion or what that monetization strategy looks like, which is like the entire reason you're in business. And I don't think you're going to spend more time on that than you are building product or driving customers, to your product. And you shouldn't, but you should spend a little bit more time. So put like a little bit of a calendar invite that every 3 months just reminds you. You're probably going to skip it, once in a while, but like just focus on like what's something we can change this quarter or try to optimize this quarter. And that's where, again, like the biggest gains we see with companies are with companies who are making some sort of adjustment at least every 6 months. Not necessarily raising their prices, but making some sort of adjustment every 6 months.
So every 6 months, yeah, because I was going to ask you how much does it change from a very early stage to a scale up? Should they be looking at it? It's just they have more data so the decision can be done in a more wiser way, or?
Yeah. So I think it's something like your value metric probably won't change, but you will have discovered different things about your customers, and your customers and your product will evolve and have changed. So what I mean by that is like over time, your physical like number might not change, or your physical value metric not change. But what you want to see is your average revenue per user, average revenue per account constantly be going up. Maybe not like exponentially or anything, but constantly going up, because that means you are better monetizing your users every quarter. So what'll happen is as you're discovering, you might discover, oh, we can just keep raising our prices because we keep adding value, and then we can justify the raising of the prices, and that's great. But some of us, we end up in very, very competitive markets. We end up in different markets where like it's really hard to change that flat rate. So what ends up happening is what happens with most companies is you end up going up market, which all of a sudden will help increase that ARPU. Or you start implementing add-ons, which you can sell into your existing base. And there's just so many different things you can do to influence that ARPU to essentially push the product forward and push your pricing forward.
Have you noticed a big difference culturally as you kind of jump across the ocean a number of times a year between how Americans or in the US they're looking at pricing and how startups here in Europe are looking at pricing? Or?
Yeah, so I think that what's really funny is the Baltics and like the Nordic region I think is even different than like Western Europe and the US. So here I literally just had a mentoring session with someone where I was asking them about their pricing, and they said, oh, well, it costs this much, and their margin was very large. And we're going to sell it for this. And I said, well, why not, double that, or why not triple that? Like just asking. And it wasn't, oh, well, we don't think we can, charge that much or anything. It was more of an answer of, well, I don't know if that's ethical. And I was like, hold on a second. Like, hold on. We shouldn't do anything that's unethical. But like, why would having a higher margin be unethical? And it was just a really like, I would never, for better or for worse, I would probably never have that conversation in the United States, or at least with U.S. companies. I think there's just some cultural shifts in which kind of, I don't know if it breaks my heart, but it definitely like, I just empathize so much is that folks out here, especially most of the Startup Wise Guys teams, their tech is normally so good because, and I think it's just the culture where like post-Soviet Union, like you had to be really good at software because you didn't have that great of hardware. The tech is always so good. It's like the selling and the marketing, which is like lagging behind a bit. And so that's one of those things where like, if I was, starting a company here specifically and I was, from this region, I probably would start like seeking out some really good go-to-market people, some really good growth people, maybe even like finding co-founders, because now a lot of stuff's remote, but maybe finding co-founders in the US or in Western Europe, to kind of complement those particular skills.
Thanks a lot. Thanks
Absolutely,
for coming.
Man.
Always good to see you.
Brother.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Man.